the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday afternoon. Another kind of sad day for America. We will discuss. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me on today. We will be discussing kind of the post-Roe versus Wade era and what it all means. If we have time, we'll talk about social media. We'll see how we do in terms of time. If not, then we'll talk about social media on a future show. I'm torn. I'm not torn. I'm struggling because in a few days, OCON, the Objectivist conference starts. I hope many of you will be there. I'd love to meet you. You should come. If you live somewhere around the Mid-Atlantic, you should pop in even for a day or two. If you're not signed up for the whole conference, it's going to be a great event. But anyway, at the end of that event, the last talk of the event, I'm giving a talk on why I'm still optimistic in spite of everything, and struggling to remain optimistic in the face of the January 6th committee hearings which are going on, and the ongoing revelations regarding the complete and utter insanity of the last days of the Trump administration, and now the complete overturn of Roe versus Wade by, of course, the judges that Donald Trump appointed to the Supreme Court. So we're going to focus today on Roe. If you've got any ideas on why I should be optimistic, email them to me so I can incorporate them in my talk. I'm kidding, but it's getting harder and harder in America today to be optimistic, at least certainly optimistic about the state of our politics. But you'll have to stay in suspense until after I give the talk to discover how I bridge that gap, or how I come to terms with all of that. All right. So as I said, we're going to be talking about the post-Roe world. I will be taking questions on this, on anything. You can ask about anything. This is completely open Q&A. You can attach a dollar amount. If you attach over $20, those questions get priority. But I do try to answer all questions, $2 to $500. You can also use the chat just to show support for the Yaron Brook Show and for everything that I do. We're off to a gangbuster start. We've already raised $57, and we haven't even started the show. So thank you, Ashton, for the $50 contribution, and thank you, Colt, and Jason. We will get to that. We will get to that question in a little bit. So thank you, Jason, as well. All right, so let's jump in on this abortion ruling. Now, of course, we knew this was coming. We had the leak. I don't think the final document is that different from the leak in a couple of issues, maybe. And maybe there's one sense, at least, that it might be a little bit better, but not as relating to abortion as related to other issues. What we do have as well from yesterday is also the Thomas opinion. It wasn't a majority opinion, but the Thomas opinion, which I think should scare all of us in terms of what he writes in that opinion and how he interprets what the court has done. So that we didn't know was coming in terms of the abortion ruling. I also want to say I'll be doing a deep dive into what the ruling actually says. What it all means. We'll be doing that again. So today, I want to talk particularly about the politics of the post-era, what it looks like, the state of political culture in America, how we look at kind of what the states are going to be doing. I'm going to be talking less about the ruling itself. I'll be saying a few things about the ruling itself, but I'll be talking less about the ruling itself because on Wednesday morning, it's going to be kind of a weird time for you guys, but at 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 29th, so just in a few days, I'll be going on with Onkar Gate and Ben Ben Baer to talk about the decision, and we'll be digging deeper into kind of the opinions themselves. We'll be streaming that both on the Ayn Rand Institute channel and on this channel, so you'll be able to catch it on either place, but we'll be streaming it on both. So there'll be kind of a joint Yaron Brook show, Ayn Rand Institute's commentary on the abolition of the elimination of Roe versus Wade, and what that all means. So that'll be a deep dive into kind of the legal issues, into actual opinions, the legal implications, to all of that. Now, again, I will also be talking about some of that today. And I, of course, talked about some of that, and I talked with Ben Baer about a lot of that when we did shows. But this is, I think, such an important issue that I think we should really dig deep into this. And it's worth as many shows as it's worth, and hopefully you guys will support those shows, because I really do think this is going to be one of those key decisions that shifts the balance, shifts the orientation. I mean, we have benefited over the last 50 years. On the one hand, over the last 100 years, we've suffered from ever shrinking economic rights, ever shrinking recognition of economic and contract law as a right. That has been shrinking for 100 years, certainly over the last 50 years, continue to shrink. And at the same time, ever increased recognition of other rights, whether it's free speech, which is actually more protected today than maybe at any point in American history by the courts, increasing personal freedoms as expressed by, until yesterday, by the right to have an abortion, by the right to marry whomever one wants, including people of the same sex, by the right to be able to purchase contraceptive. That is the idea that the Constitution prohibits states from banning the sale of contraception, which I think is crucial. So in many respects, we have seen an increase, and it seems to be a movement towards, increasing our individual rights in the social realm while restricting our rights in the economic realm. I mean, you could see that with a push towards even legalization of marijuana, and maybe movement towards legalizing drugs, and more of a voice about legalizing prostitution. And so you can see that in general over the last 50. Think about it. Lenny Bruce used to have to sit in jail for his stand-up routine, right? That's where freedom of speech is much, much better protected today than it was back then. So we saw on the one hand economic freedom shrinking, on the other hand social freedom is expanding. And I think what the decision yesterday suggests is that we're entering potentially a period in which all of our rights are going to be shrinking. That is, the economic rights are going to be shrinking, and our social rights are going to be shrinking. And that there really is nobody on the left or the right defending any of those rights. Maybe one here, one there, maybe specific ones. But the right has abandoned their defense or their attempt to defend economic freedoms. It's always been anti many of the social freedoms. The left has always been against economic freedoms, and now is abandoning, with its attack on free speech in particular, is attacking personal freedoms, And I think the first of those personal freedoms to fall, And look, the whole differentiation between personal freedom and economic freedom is bizarre, but we'll talk about that, and I'll say something about that in the context of Alito's opinion, because I think there's an important point in his opinion that suggests that we're moving in, that this is the new direction. I think I think yesterday, the walking away from Roe versus Wade is the first sign that the court, we know that the legislature has already moved beyond any kind of protection of any kind of freedoms and rights that we have, that the courts now are going into a new phase where no rights, none of our rights, are actually going to be protected. I think that Thomas's opinion has already hinted at that, basically saying if we can do away with Roe versus Wade, we can do away with, he says this, we can, by the same logic that we did away with Roe versus Wade, by the same logic, we can do away with gay marriage. By the same logic, we can do away with the so-called right to contraception. By the same logic, we can do away with a lot of things. So you get personal freedoms being attacked already by Thomas, and Thomas is kind of I think, considered the most intellectual of them in terms of the most consistent right-wing thinker of them, the one who represents the right the best, and therefore the others are likely to latch onto that. And then the other aspect of it, the economic freedoms, if you read Alito's decision, now this was more so in the draft, but in the decision itself, it's still true. Economic liberties are put in scare quotes. And he talked in the draft, and he echoes this in the opinion, his opposition to Lochner. Now, Lochner is the last Supreme Court decision that truly unequivocally protects our economic liberties, protects our contract rights, protects our voluntary rights to contract under terms that both sides view agreeable without consideration for, I don't know, social benefits, society's so-called well-being or whatever. Lochner is the last really good decision on this. And Alito is anti-Lochner, and he explicitly says he's anti-Lochner, and he's anti-economic liberties, anti-economic. They don't appear in the Constitution. There's nothing in the Constitution that provides us with economic liberties. So by the same logic, you can see, by the same logic of Roe versus Wade, you will see an acceleration of the decline in whatever protection we still have on economic liberties. We thought this court, with its 6 conservatives, would be pro-free markets, anti-administrative state, and so on. Unlikely. Maybe there's some judges that are there, but unlikely. Certainly Alito gives us no reason. No reason to think that he is going to support anything that protects contract rights, property rights, economic rights, if they somehow conflict with his historical analysis, with what was acceptable, I don't know, or what he thinks is the common good, the general welfare, or whatever. So, again, there's a lot to this opinion, and to Thomas's opinion, that should really, really, really scare you, even if you don't care that much about abortion, but you really should. But even if you don't care that much about abortion, so this is a truly horrific opinion. This is truly a step back for freedom and liberty in the United States. This is truly a dark day for America, for American freedom. A woman should have a right to do with her body as she pleases. She has an autonomous right, a right of autonomy over her body. I can't think of anything more sacred than your autonomy over yourself, your actions, your thoughts, and your body. Now, I know the Supreme Court doesn't recognize that right, but that's the fundamental sense in which the Declaration of Independence says you have an inalienable right to life. Whose life? Your life. Which means to do as you see fit with your life. And in the case of abortion, the mother is the only one that is a person, that is a human being, that has a life. Therefore, it's her body. There is no child. There is a woman and there is a fetus attached to her, but it's not a person. It's not a human being. It's a potential human being. It will become a human being when it is born. It will become a human being when it is separated from the mother. But it is not a human being until then. It is not an individual until then. And therefore has no rights until then. But the mother does have rights. The mother is a living, breathing, functional, individuated person. We are sacrificing an actual person to a potential person. And in that sense, it is a massive violation of individual rights, a massive violation of the spirit and the wording of the Declaration of Independence. It is anti-American. It is anti-human. It is barbaric. And indeed, if you look around the world at countries that have banned abortion, you will find the most barbaric countries are the ones that have banned abortion. The most Catholic, the most religious, and the most barbaric, the most Muslim. That's the company now that many states in the United States are going to keep. Wes, thank you for the support. And for those of you who somebody agrees, somebody is impressed by the fact that they agree with me. No, I don't think an honest person can think. I mean, people can make mistakes. I don't want to attribute honesty to people or dishonesty to people. But no, I think that anybody who looks at the facts, life begins, but human life does not. You're not human. You're not a separate human being. As Leonard Peikoff says it, to be a separate human being, you have to be engaged in self-sustaining, self-generating action. Self-sustaining, self-generating. You can't be, and I'm quoting Leonard Peikoff, you can't be plugged in. If you're plugged in, you're not an individuated, separate, independent, rights, having rights, human being. You're just not. There are plenty of secular pro-life. No, I mean, this is the other thing that Leonard Peikoff says. No, they're not pro-life, they're pro-death. They're pro-enslaving the mother. They're pro-committing the mother to a life she doesn't want. Thus enslaving her to their morality, to their code, to their view. No, the pro-abortion side is the pro-life. Pro-abortion side is the pro-human life. Yes, they are secular anti-abortion people. Yes, they are secular, they are anti-abortion people who are who like Ayn Rand. So what? They're wrong. And whether they do it consciously or unconsciously, they are bought into a theocratic mindset. A mindset driven by religion. Because it's only religion that can cause you epistemologically to confuse a potential human being with an actual human being. To pretend that an entity inside some other entity is exactly the same, no difference, than an entity separated that is now self-generating and self-sustaining. So what drives this era is a religious attitude, a religious perspective, a religious view of some kind of, sacredness of instilling life at conception, human life. You're a human being from conception. I mean, note that some of the states that are going to ban abortion, and ban abortion in all cases, in all trimesters, some of them want to ban the abortion pill. Abortion pill that, some of you will argue, oh, but it's viable at 21 weeks or whatever, 24 weeks or whatever it is. We're not talking about the last trimester. We're not talking about, changing the law to say, you have a right to abort until week 21 or 18 or whatever, heartbeats or whatever. No, we're talking about you can completely ban women from aborting, including using the pill, and view it as a criminal act. And yet, on day one, it's just a couple of cells. It's just like your skin cells. Indeed, there's going to be a time where we can take a skin cell and fertilize it and clone people. Does that mean every skin cell here that I have, that I'm brushing off, that I'm killing right now, every one of those cells is a human being because they could become a human being? No, in the first trimester, it's truly a clump of cells. And yet, you're going to have half of the states in the United States, or more than half the states in the United States, make it a criminal offense for a woman to abort a clump of cells that she does not want. Right? And I want more human beings. I don't want less human beings. I'm for bigger populations. I'm not worried about overpopulation. Bring them on. I want lots of people. I want people who are wanted, people who are going to be loved. And I want people to have rights. See, I don't want huge numbers of people in a world where they don't have rights, in a world where they can't use their own mind, their own body, their own, and act according to their own self-interest. I don't want a world in which you need permission, or where everything you do is going to land you up in jail. Some states are actually considering penalizing women who go to another state to have an abortion. So you might be in Texas, you fly to New Mexico, have an abortion, and come back and you're arrested. I mean, talk about a police state. So, no, this is a direct attack on liberty, a direct attack on freedom. The victims here are young women. Yes, you can do a lot to try not to get pregnant. Accidents still happen. Moments of passion still happen. But you see, the attitude of those who are against abortion is fundamentally anti-pleasure, anti-sex. Whoops. You had a moment of passion and you got pregnant for it, well, you're stuck with a kid for life, forever. You don't want it? Tough. Why? Because. And of course, some states, it might even be contraceptions that are in danger. Who knows? Yeah, and if there's who knows how far this goes? It's truly a dark day. Now, it's not true, as the left is claiming. I see this all over Twitter, and it's pretty disgusting. The left claims, oh, this is the first time in American history that a right that was well established is being taken away. Now, it's true. it is a right that's well established is being taken away. The government is withdrawing its protection of a right that we have. It's withdrawing its recognition of a right. It's not the first time. Give me a break. I mean, Larkin is a good example. Larkin recognized the right to contract, the right for employers and employees to decide on whatever terms of employment they wanted. That right was taken away by regulatory agencies, by a bureaucracy, by this alphabet soup of agencies that control every contract that we have. We have no longer any ability to contract freely. So our rights are being taken away, chipped away at, constantly, eroded for over 100 years now. But as I said, the movement is being towards greater personal freedoms, where in personal I exclude for the purpose of this discussion economic freedoms. We've been moving towards greater personal freedoms. This is the beginning of that collapse. It's very, very difficult in the world in which we live right now to be positive about America's future. It's very difficult. And partially, it's difficult because the people who support abortion have no clue why they support abortion, have no conception of rights, have no conception of individual rights. The next moment, they're ready to violate your rights in 100 different other places. So that's the left. The pro-abortion left is completely clueless, has no idea how to make an argument for abortion, because they know that if they make a proper argument for abortion, it has implications for liberty that they don't want. And the right, which used to at least represent some defense of some freedom, some liberty in some areas of American life, is completely and utterly bankrupt, completely and utterly rejects all rights. All rights. And there's nobody in America that defend any rights. I mean, there's a small number of us. There are the free market people who want to protect it there. There's some people, but the language of rights is lacking. I just reviewed, and I'll do a show on this, I just reviewed the new kind of manifesto, the statement of principles of the National Conservatives. And you know what never appears in the entire document? The entire document, long document. It's not that long, but long enough. And I'll go over it with you one of these shows. What concept never appears in this document? This is the right. And this, by the way, is signed on by people like Peter Thiel and a bunch of intellectuals from the right, a bunch of intellectuals who used to pretend to be pro-markets and all this stuff. But what's the one thing that doesn't exist in the document? The concept of individual rights. The Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. That does not exist. A very defining idea of what this country is about, the very defining concept of what makes America America, doesn't exist. And that's the growing movement on the right. We know how completely hopeless and pathetic and awful the left is. Right? All right, so what are the prospects at this point? Ideally, the next move would be that Congress pass a law that makes abortion legal nationally, overriding all state laws. Let's say up until 21 weeks. That would at least cover 98.7% of all abortions. All right. I mean, that wouldn't be the ideal, but that would be the next step. But that's not going to happen. For that to happen, Democrats would have to have 60 seats in the Senate. Democrats would have to control the House. It's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious that once we get into this midterm election, Democrats are going to lose the House and lose the Senate, and all of us are supporting that. And yet, the only way for us to get a bill that protects a woman's right to have an abortion, at least in even just the first trimester, depends on Democrats having a majority. And they're not going to have it. So it's not going to happen at the federal level. On the contrary, I don't know if you saw Mike Pence. Mike Pence, immediately when this came out, immediately announced that the next thing for Republicans to do, the next big issue Republicans must take up and fight for, is a bill in Congress that bans abortion nationally, that overrides any state that allows for abortions. And look, it's much more likely, I think, in the near future, for Republicans to have 60 Senate seats and a majority in the House and the White House. I think that's much more likely for Republicans to achieve that than for Democrats. And imagine if they have that. Imagine if they pass a bill that basically bans abortion in the United States completely, and we join Iran as some of the few countries in the world that ban abortions completely. Pence is not a good guy. He was never a good guy. He was always a religious conservative, and he was the vice president of Trump. How could he be a good guy? Pence is a religionist, always has been. I've never liked Pence. He stood up to Trump. Okay, good for him. That doesn't make him a good guy. It makes him a good guy in a particular context, but it certainly doesn't make him a good guy overall. I mean, it's much more likely that we move towards domination by the right, and domination by the right in a way that precludes our rights. Okay, one more thing I want to say, and then I see we've got a lot of Super Chat questions around this issue. One of the things that this has shown us, and it's not a surprise, but it's still worth pointing out, that is that these Supreme Court justices, at least some of them, are stone-cold liars. I mean, when they were nominated, and this is true of all three Trump judges, but particularly the last two, they were asked explicitly about abortion. They all said, oh no, we believe in precedent, we're not revolutionaries, we're not here to turn things over. Indeed, what's his name? The second guy, the one that was accused of sexual assault. God. All right, one of you will tell me who it is. Anyway, told Susan Collins, yeah, I have no intention to overturn Roe versus Wade. Kavanaugh, I have no intention to overturn Roe versus Wade. They sit in congressional hearings, and they know there are litmus tests, and they play the litmus test, and they lie about it. Now, I'm sure this has always happened to some extent, but the speed at which they flipped, the speed at which they went from, no, we respect precedent, and we would never do anything dramatic, we would never do anything this, we wouldn't support the overturn of this, to first opportunity they get, these three judges that Trump nominated, and bam, they do. So now we can I will add, one more reason to despise Trump, as if I needed one. And the January 6th committee seems to provide, not the committee itself, the testimony that, by the way, the testimony that Republicans are giving, that people who worked for Trump are giving, that people who were Trump's associates are giving, people who are close to Trump are giving. That testimony, plus this now court decision, is now more reason to despise Trump and everything he stands for and everything he stood for. That's in my book. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, we got a bunch of super chat question. Was there anything else? Well, I'm sure if there's more stuff, we'll get to it while answering these questions. Paul, thank you. Paul has a $100 question. On the topic, thanks for bringing this up because I was going to, but since you asked the question, it's easier to do from the perspective of the question. Can you explain what exactly the Ninth Amendment is being ignored, that the Ninth Amendment is being ignored by Alito and the conservative cabal in their opinion? Yes. I mean, the Ninth Amendment basically says that the rights enumerated in the Bill of Rights are not all our rights. That we have rights that are not enumerated because you can't just enumerate all the things that you have a right to. And that these are just indications. Now, Alito doesn't completely ignore this. But he has this weird view of what the enumerated rights, the unenumerated rights should be. All, or not should be, all. They have to be, have been recognized at the time of the writing of the Constitution as rights. They have to have historical precedent. They have to be something that historically was protected in the United States. Then they're rights. So notice, there's no philosophical view of what human individual rights are. There's no view of these are the kind of things that constitutes individual rights. This is what you have a right to in principle. This is what should guide us, a definition of rights. No. I wonder what people in the 18th century, early 19th century thought was okay. Oh, we can't include slavery in that because we got a 14th Amendment that does away with that. But pretty much everything else, what was okay back then? And if they viewed it as okay back then we should count it as, it has to have a history. Why? So there weren't a lot of abortions in the 18th and 19th century, early 20th century, not a lot of abortions. There were abortions. And abortion wasn't considered something that was okay. Oh, partially because it was pretty brutal, unsafe, unbelievably risky, didn't have the technology. So yeah, it wasn't that prevalent. Plus, we lived in a society that was far more religious. So we can't take into account any changes that have happened since then? The fact that it wasn't legal back then and it is legal now? The fact that it's safer now? It's easier to do now? You can take a pill? That is irrelevant to the discussion? It really is a kind of anti-intellectualism. Yes, anti-intellectualism. There's no principle of rights. There's no idea of rights from which I can then think of and then apply what this principle actually means. No, I have to digest the text and figure out from the text what it actually means. And if the text is not clear because the Constitution doesn't mention abortion ultimately, talk about concrete bound mentality. If the Constitution doesn't mention abortion, well, then it's not covered. Well, okay, so we won't just use mentioning abortion. We'll also ask the question, because there's a Ninth Amendment after all, is there some other context in which the founders might have thought that abortion would be legal? No, okay, well, thank you, Wanda Freeman. Yes, they treat the Constitution like the Bible. They treat the Founding Fathers as sages or as prophets. They try to read their mind like they try to read God's mind. There's no application of the idea of individual rights to all these issues. Some of these issues are new because things change. The right today, and I think this shows it, the right today is so anti-intellectual. So anti-intellectual, and you can see it here. You can see it on, sorry if I'm going to pick on some of you and get angry with you, but so be it. Somebody says the vagina is magical portal into individuality. God, if you can't see the difference between an entity that is individuated and an entity that's inside another entity, I have nothing to say to you. There's a difference. And of course, Roe versus Wade is not about abortions 5 minutes before birth. Those never happen. And if you think that the cells from conception are human being, that's anti-intellectual. That's non-thinking. It's not even bad thinking. It's just non-thinking. And I'm sorry if I've insulted a bunch of you. I don't really care. Think. Look. Use your mind. So, what you need in order to understand the Ninth Amendment is a proper conception of individual rights and a proper conception of what they are protecting. They're protecting the freedom of action of an individual, the freedom over his body, the freedom over his actions, the freedom over his mind. And then the question is, okay, well, what does that imply about all these things that human beings do? And it means that you have a right. You have a right to live. You have a right to act. You have a right to act based on your own judgment, free of coercion, free of authority, free of force. And that encompasses all your actions. It doesn't stop somewhere because somebody's offended by it. As long as you're not hurting other people, as long as you're not violating other people's rights by coercing them or by using force against them, by stealing from them, by violating their property rights or whatever, then you have a right to do pretty much anything. It doesn't mean that's what rights are there for. But you have a right to take drugs, yeah. And this is what they're afraid of. You see, this is why they can't protect individual rights. This is why they won't protect individual rights. This is why they won't recognize what the Ninth Amendment actually means. Because if they recognize that you have a right to your own decisions and your own actions, even when other people disagree with them, even when they might be harmful to yourself, whoa, that opens up a can of worms for the conservatives. A whole can of worms for the conservatives. No, what about drugs? What about prostitution? What about suicide? What about a lot of things? What about contracts? What about minimum, wanting to pay your workers less than the minimum wage? What about any of these things? Right? So they're purposefully ignoring the Ninth Amendment. They're purposely ignoring the concept of rights. I think I've told you in the past, Scalia, who is somebody who is considered, the guru of the conservatives, right, said that rights are nonsense on stilts, basically quoting Bentham. He didn't believe in individual rights. He believed in the Constitution as Bible, but not in individual rights. So, individual rights are dead in this country. The concept, the legal protection, the legal idea of them, it's gone. It's over. It's finished. We're going to have to start, in many respects, we're going to have to start from scratch. From scratch. Thank you, Paul. Let's see. All right, we're at like $400, so we've got about $250 to go for our usual goal, which is $650. We'll see if we make it or if we if I've offended too many people to support the show. We'll see. I think I've offended some of my good, some people who are regular supporters are probably offended by my position on this. Let's see. Lance, okay, let me just, Lance says, Ayn Rand did think it should be legal until birth, right? Some people say she didn't think that. Yes, she did. She thought it should be legal until birth. She didn't think it would be practiced until birth. She didn't think necessarily doctors would do it until birth. She didn't think it was necessarily even moral for anybody to have an abortion before birth. It depends on why they had it. But she certainly thought the government has no business interfering in it. It was none of the government's business to step in until birth. That you don't have rights. Therefore, the government is not there to protect you until you are a human being, a person, an individuated. In other words, and again, Leonard Peikoff's words, self-sustaining, self-generated, not plugged in. Not plugged in. And if you want to see this, right, if you want to see Leonard Peikoff talk about this, and I think I posted on Twitter a link to the video or the audio where he presents his position on abortion, and you should listen to it. And of course, you can read Ayn Rand's position on abortion as well. All right. Michael writes, this court seems to be very active and principled in a way. What do you think of the court upholding Maine's school choice program, even though the vouchers can go towards religious schools? Look, the decision in and of itself, I don't necessarily oppose, because I think, if you're going to have vouchers, this is part of the problem. If you're going to have vouchers, you've got to be able to let the parent choose which school and where to apply the voucher. But it is, no question, part of a trend. And it's a trend of the court to undo decisions it has done in the past and undo them in the direction of more religion government interaction. That is, that separation, that clear separation the courts have attempted to make over the last, I think, about 50 years between religion and state. I think that the Maine decision is a step in the wrong direction, even though I might agree on the case that vouchers they should be able to give it to whoever. We should ultimately privatize the schools. The whole system of vouchers is corrupt. The whole idea of taking taxpayer money and giving it to parents is corrupt. But, all right, as a transition point, but the point is that I think that this is part of a greater trend, and that is to undo the separation of church and state, because I don't think conservatives believe that there is a separation of church and state in the First Amendment. I think they view it as soft. Well, you shouldn't institute an official religion. The government shouldn't institute an official religion. That doesn't mean the government can't interfere in religious activities, fund religious things, the establishment of a form of religion is not the same, they would argue, right? So I think this is a part of the dismantling of the separation of church and state, which I am a big believer on, the wall of separation that Jefferson talks about, at least in the Constitution of Virginia, not so much in our Constitution, a wall of separation. I believe in that wall of separation, and I think that anything that starts eroding that, is dangerous. And again, if you read the dim hypothesis by Leonard Peikoff, the threat that he sees for America, and which I agree with, and I see it even more today than ever before, is the threat of the dismantling of separation of religion and state, a religionist regime, a nationalist religious regime that is authoritarian. That's the direction we're heading. And I don't see this court, these conservative judges standing in its way. I just don't see it. And it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Okay, that's on a topic, separate topic. That's on a separate topic. Okay, Bree says, this is a loss of rights, but the ruling is a great victory for state rights. The ruling exactly says, if it is not in the Constitution, the federal government has no authority to regulate it. Yeah, but that's not true because of the Ninth Amendment. This is exactly what the Ninth Amendment was meant to prevent. The Ninth Amendment recognizes that there are rights that are not enumerated that the federal government should protect. And then the question is, how do you find those rights? How do you identify those rights? And that's what I said, requires the intellectual work of defining what individual rights are and where do they apply and how they apply. That's the real work. But no, there's no such thing as state rights. There is no such thing as state rights. There's only individual rights. Only individual rights. Told you I'd offend everybody today. There's no such thing as state rights. States, entity collectives, groups, governments don't have rights. The government of Texas doesn't have rights. No collective has rights. Only individuals have rights. And the government of Texas has no more right to violate an individual's rights than the federal government has to violate individual rights. Nobody has a right to violate individual rights. Not the state, not the federal government, not other individuals, not any group, not the church, nobody. That's the whole point of individual rights. You can't violate them. And a government is supposed to protect you from violating those rights. And if a state government violates your right, the job of the federal government is to stop them. Stop them. Laws will not be all the same under such a system. Because there are issues that are not clearly violation of rights or not violation of rights. Like the death penalty is not necessarily an issue of rights or not violating rights. So you could have different states having different procedures, different laws. There are lots of laws like that make a difference. And you could actually have competition over those and see what works and what doesn't, and what the consequences of different regimes. But when it's clear, when it's determined, when it's unequivocal that something is a violation of rights like slavery, or something is a violation of rights like banning abortion, then it is absolutely 100% the role of the federal government to impose that on states. Again, no such thing as collective rights, no such thing as tribal rights, no such things of national rights, no such things as state rights, only individual rights. And no such things as non-individual potential human being rights. They don't have rights. Only the individual has rights. Companies are not collective. Companies are individuals. Companies are collections of individuals. What you're protecting when you're protecting a company's right to do acts is protecting its individual owner's rights. Companies are representatives of individuals. States and companies can't use force, can't use coercion. Whew. I got excited there. All right. So Bree, I completely disagree. I don't believe there is no such thing. It is no such thing as state rights. Objectivism does not support democracy, does not support localism, does not support any of this. It supports the individual's inalienable right to his own life, his own liberty, his property, and his pursuit of happiness. Inalienable. Which means nobody can take it away. Not a state, not a federal, nobody, not his neighbor, nobody. That's what it means to have inalienable rights. States don't have those. Only individuals have them. All right. Whew. All right. Frank says, for $50. Thank you, Frank. Women produce babies. should women be free to contract for profit under ironclad laws an unwanted pregnancy with a monogamous, stable couple? Yeah, so you're asking, should women be allowed to become surrogates? Yes, I think so. I think they have to be able to, there has to be a contract, they all have to be adults. I don't think you get a 16-year-old girl to do it, but if they're an adult and they can sign a contract and they have a clear contract and everybody's mature enough to understand the consequences, because it's not an easy process, then absolutely surrogacy for money should be legal. I don't see whose rights are being violated by allowing that. So absolutely, I think it should be legal. All right, John says, thank you, John. Didn't Ayn Rand say one may argue about the later stages of pregnancy, but the essential issue concerns only the first 3 trimesters, 3 months? How does that square with the insistence that abortion be legal to the second or third trimester? So first, Ayn Rand was very clear that she believed abortion should be legal until birth. She was very clear on that. If you read what she's saying when she says one may argue about it, is that the other side might have some honest arguments to make. If they're still wrong, but they might have some honest arguments to make about the last trimester. But what she's saying here, but the first trimester is where you cannot make an honest argument against abortion in the first trimester. There is no possible way in which you can be mistaken about the first trimester. The first trimester is clear-cut, unequivocal. Yes. Okay, so there's some tricky issues about the second and third trimester, particularly about the third trimester, right? That's what she's talking about, the third trimester. There's some tricky issues there that we have to deal with, but I've dealt with them. Abortion should be allowed. But I can understand, she's saying, why some people struggle with the question of abortion in the third trimester. I get it. There's no excuse to be against abortion in the first trimester. That's what she's saying. And let's be clear. Missouri, today, as of today, it's illegal to have an abortion from conception. From conception. This was never about the final trimester. This is never about the third trimester. If the Supreme Court had come back and said, which it had, right? Roe versus Wade did not allow abortions throughout. It didn't give a woman a right to have an abortion in the third trimester. That it left to the states when it said there should be a cutoff. It's a question of when, and the states determine that. If the Supreme Court had just reinforced that and said, yeah, okay, we think it should be at I don't know, heartbeat or viability or whatever the hell that means, then that would have been bad, but not as bad. And by the way, let me be really clear how important Ayn Rand thought this issue was. She thought this was one of the most important issues in politics. She thought abortion should determine, it was a litmus test for her in terms of who she could support. So note this. Ayn Rand did not vote for Ronald Reagan. She didn't support him in the Republican primaries in 1976, and she didn't vote for him in 1980 for one fundamental reason, and that is that he supported a ban on abortion. Even though he was probably, he never did anything about it, and he was probably, who knows what he really thought. But for Ayn Rand, this was an amazing, this was not an amazing, this was a crucial, fundamental issue of rights. This is a fundamental issue of human dignity. This is a fundamental issue of separation of church and state. This is a fundamental issue that we should be all fighting for. This was not something she took lightly. And if you listen to her Q&As when abortion comes out, you get that passion from her. So when she says we might argue, again, yeah, you might have some reasonable arguments about this on the final trimester, but you're still wrong. And if you read her, I think that's pretty obvious. And again, her student, and who ultimately wrote the book on objectivism as a systematic philosophy, OPA, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, Leonard Peikoff, same view of abortion. This is not a minor issue in the politics of objectivism. This is a major issue for both Ayn Rand and Leonard Peikoff, at least was. All right. Let's see. Corey says, something about this topic brings out the most bizarre analogies. Maybe you should remind them that just because you have the legal right to do something doesn't make it moral. I said that a minute ago. Although depending on the context, it could. Exactly. I mean, it certainly, there are lots of reasons why somebody would have an abortion, particularly late, where you'd say it's immoral. They had an opportunity. Because look, a third trimester abortion is difficult for the mother. It's difficult for the woman for a variety of different reasons. It's difficult for the woman. It's physically real surgery. It's psychologically, in lots of ways, it's really difficult. And if she's just procrastinated in it, then yeah, that could be immoral of her to do it because she's doing it for the wrong reasons. But if, for example, the baby has, the fetus has a real physical damage, mental damage, brain damage, Zika, if you remember the Zika, then I think it's criminal and immoral not to have an abortion and to bring a child like that into the world. So, but the state has no business in this decision. There's no rights that it needs to protect. There is no someone that's being murdered. There is no someone. There is no one. There's a part of the woman's body that she does not want anymore. Her right. All right, let's see. Sean asked, do you foresee more vigilante laws giving citizens standing to sue lawbreakers as in Texas anti-abortion law? It's going to be really interesting what the Supreme Court does with the Texas abortion law, what happens to Texas abortion law. But this whole idea of citizens standing to sue lawbreakers, yeah, if that law stands as is, I see it being used all over the place. And already in California, they're talking about using it for a bunch of leftist stuff that they want to get passed, and they're worried the Supreme Court won't agree with them, so they'll make it a civil issue where individual citizens, vigilantes, can sue you over it. So no, this use of this is going to skyrocket. It's going to skyrocket. All right. We're $35 short of our 650 goal. I think, given the number of people watching, given the topic, we should be able to reach $1,000 today. So let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can reach $1,000. Although I've probably offended half the people here, so they're not going to support it. All right, we still got a bunch of questions on this topic. We do have $20 questions that I'm putting to the side because they're on different topics. I'll get to those later. I'm going to now go through the $5, $10, $15 questions on all the ones on abortion, and I'm going to leave the others for the side for now. All right. Jason said, should American women take a knee when the national anthem is played? Yeah. I think taking a knee is appropriate way of protesting. It's a protest that does not violate anybody else's rights, does not place a burden on anybody else. It's people notice it. That's what a protest is supposed to do. It's a pretty harmless way of protesting something that's going on in the country that you see as bad. Right? So yes, I think taking a knee is a good idea. I've never objected to people taking a knee. Even when I disagreed with what they're taking a knee about, you can argue with them about what it is they're taking a knee without rejecting the idea of taking a knee. Right? By the way, we got about 175 people watching live or more. It'd be great if you like the show, if you like it, of course, if you like it. That helps with the algorithm. It helps promote the Iran Book Show. It gets into people's feeds. It does all that. So we have about 100 likes and 177 people watching. So please, before you leave today, before you leave the show, and I know you leave, people go in and out constantly, please consider liking the show as you go along. John, thank you. Really appreciate the support. Let's see. All right, so we're $15 away from the $650 target, $365 away from the $1,000 target. Okay, Ed says, Ed says, irony. Arizona abortion protest, police released tear gas, lawmakers held hostage in Senate building while January 6th committee is doing their thing. Why is that irony? So what am I missing here? Arizona abortion protest, police released tear gas on the abortion protest, I think. Lawmakers held protest in the Senate building. Yeah, because January 6th, I don't know, was tear gas ever released? Were lawmakers protected in the building? No. I mean, clearly, law enforcement was overwhelmed on January 6th. But okay, I get what you're saying, Ed. It's about a different topic. Different topic. Okay, Hopper. Campbell, the Supreme Court also just ruled that states and localities can no longer restrict concealed carry. I can now carry a handgun in Times Square and on the subway. How cool is that? I know I'm going to piss everybody off this show. I don't know that I'm that cool with it. I don't think it's cool. I don't think it's cool. I mean, the notion that as crime is going up, that somebody next to me might be carrying a gun legally and the police can do nothing about it under his jacket, and at any moment he can flip out and take that out and start shooting people. Yes, other people can shoot him back, but can shoot people. I'm not happy about it. I'm just not, guns are not cool. They're cool in the context of self-defense. But it's not cool to live in a culture, to live in a society where everybody feels like they have to carry a gun because fill in the blank. I don't want to live in a place like that. Never have. I want to live in a place where nobody feels like they have to have a gun because everything is so safe and the police are so good at what they do. That's the kind of world I want to live in. So I'm not happy by the fact that people are now all over the United States are going to carry concealed weapons. And I had a concealed weapons permit because my life was threatened. But I didn't like carrying. I hated carrying. I hated the fact that I needed to carry. So gun issues are not, don't get me excited. I'm much more excited about having, your right to have a gun in your home, in self-defense. Somebody breaks in, absolutely. But for everybody, for a lot of people to be walking around and the police not be able to do anything. There used to be stop and frisk. Remember stop and frisk? And now they stop and frisk and you're carrying a gun and it's like, all right, go ahead. There's nothing you can do about it. So, the criminals are massively going to benefit from concealed weapons for everybody. Friend Hopper, the other Hopper, the two I get confused, right? Thank you. Really appreciate the support. All right. Let's see. Right. Chris asks, could this potentially eventually be better for abortion if it compels Congress to pass a law protecting the right to an abortion? Well, yes, but there's no way that Congress is going to pass that. It's going to take decades. We'll have to win a lot of battles before that happens. It's just not going to happen. It's much more likely, I think, in the political world in which we live today. In the political world in which we live today, it's much more likely, in my view, that Congress passes a national law banning abortion than they pass a national law permitting abortion. Look, the right is on the ascent, the left is descending. You'll see that in the midterm elections. You've seen that over the last, it used to be that the Democrats controlled the House and the Senate for decades. And then starting during the Bush presidency, Republicans, or starting really in 1994, Republicans have slowly gained, and Republicans have dominated the House and the Senate for most of the period since 1994, for most of the last 30 years. And that's going to become even more so as the left becomes more nutty. The right is going to become more dominant, not less dominant. Right? And I think you'll see that this coming election. Now, it could be that abortion motivates people to go out and vote Democratic and hinder the ability of Republicans. But I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. I think Republicans will win big in November, and then they'll win again in 2024, and then all bets are off. And then they could win well beyond that, because I think they are putting together as they see what they've discovered is that the winning formula. We always used to think the winning formula in politics was to be socially liberal and physically conservative. And what they've discovered is that the winning combination is to be fiscally liberal and socially conservative. And that's what the right has become. It's become left-wing on economic issues and oppressive anti-rights on social issues. And they're winning on that agenda, and that's what Trump has taught them, and that's what they're going to run with. And that's very dangerous. And again, more likely that Congress passes a law that bans it than Congress passes a law that allows it. Let's see. Roland, yeah, see you at Ocon. Cool. Liam says, you're the best at getting to the point while addressing all the nuances involved. Most intellectuals are either too nuanced and insipid or too simplistic. Thank you, Liam. That is a fantastic compliment. That is really, really nice. Thank you. Okay, not related. Somewhat related, Doodle Bunny says, so now we're going to have a generation of defunded police departments, hyperinflation, and unwanted babies. No, I mean, the funny thing is we're going to have unwanted babies, we're going to have inflation, but we're not going to defund the police. We're already undoing the defund the police movement. The defund the police movement is dead. It's dead. It died almost immediately when it was born. It died as soon as crime rates in the United States spiked. You could see it just died in San Francisco. It's going to die in Los Angeles. It's going to die soon in Philadelphia. It's dead. All those district attorneys are being recalled. They're being voted out of office. You know, the really bad district attorney in New York is being overruled by the mayor. You know, again, this is what I said, when the left gets nutty, it loses. And Americans are not soft on crime. Americans are not soft on crime. And that includes the left. You know, it was the leftists of San Francisco recalled the nutty leftists district attorney of San Francisco. But it was like tech people and Asians and, you know, people who are not, and other minorities who care about the safety of their kids. It was the dominant group that supported this district attorney, the one who basically legalized many crimes in the city, were white, upper middle class, woke, you know, white leftists. So I don't buy this defund the police. I think that is already being reversed right now. Michael asks, is the Bill of Rights sloppy in a way because the founders didn't really understand individual rights? It's sloppy in a way because, yes, they didn't have a full understanding, but they had a really good understanding. It's sloppy because they had to deal with slavery, and they had to deal with that contradiction that's at the heart of the entire Declaration. And it's sloppy Because they didn't have the experience that we have. They you know, this is, they were pioneers. You know, it takes some trial and error to get it just right. And we haven't benefited from that. So they got it as good as they could, given the compromise with slavery and given they couldn't go all out. If they had clearly defined individual rights in the Constitution, then immediately slavery becomes something that you have to go to war for. And it's not clear what you do with women as well. So, you know, it's a problem, right? So they don't clearly define it, partially in order to sustain the compromise over slavery, and partially because they couldn't imagine all the ways in which rights could be violated that were not being protected. I mean, again, if you read Madison, he's really concerned about this. He's worried that by specifying which rights we have, that all other rights will not be protected. And he was right. He was right to be concerned. But of course, it's good that they at least listed some, because at least the ones that they are listed are somewhat protected, whereas the ones that are not listed are not protected at all. All right, let's see. Mark says, hard for people to understand abortion as legal until birth, but it is the only proper position. Thanks, Dr. Booker. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Yes, it is. But what's stunning to me is that, you know, as Ayn Rand said, you can somewhat understand people about the third trimester. Okay, let's defend abortion up until week 21, which is 98.7% of all abortions. At least we'll have something. But they won't even do that. They won't even do that. They'll happily endorse Texas banning all abortions, including, by the way, in many of these states, including rape, incest, life of the mother, completely deformed fetus, all of that, still can't do an abortion. Some states will have sweeping legislation like that bans everything, no exception. All right. Michael says, how can we have a modern free country when 40% want to live in dark ages? Well, you could argue 80% want to live in dark. Do they really want to live in the dark ages, or they just want to hold ideas that are consistent with the dark ages but don't want to actually live in them? I think the only way we stay a free country is because people don't actually want the consequences of their own beliefs. But they're going to get them, and we're not going to be free for very long unless something is done about it. Michael asks, is the religious nature of this court an indication that DIM is coming? True. Yeah, I think so. And remember that the last member appointed by Trump, she is not just a little religious. She's like super religious, almost cultish in the form of religion. And nobody cared about that. I mean, she was clearly did not belong on this court. Barrett. She is not qualified to be in the Supreme Court judge because she is a nutty religionist. She belongs to a nutty religionist cult. Right? So, absolutely, this is, we've got one branch of government that is on track towards DIM coming true. Liam says, medieval theocrats who want to create this duty to constrain your life and your sexual choices, what motivates them is taking away choice, not preserving life. Yes, it's taking away life. It's taking away happiness. And in this case, it's taking away sex. That's what they really hate. Rand makes this point. What really they're objecting to is sex. What they really want to make is they want to make sex dangerous. They want to make sex scary. They want to make sex, they want to reverse the sexual revolution. And this is why they want to go after contraceptions as well. They want they want to prevent you from sex because what they hate is sex and pleasure and everything that entails. They hate the sexual revolution more than anything else. If you listen to modern conservatives, the thing they think is the worst that's happened over the last 100 years, they don't talk about, they don't care about the economy. What they think is the worst to happen is contraception that led to the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution is the pits in their view. And that's what they're really opposed to. They're opposed to the pleasure that is involved in sex. Okay, different question. All right, Cook says, Josh Hawley made a package deal out of abortion advocates with Wall Street and corporate interests, saying, paraphrase, it was part of their effort to lord over the working class and social conservatives. Yes. I mean, and again, he is the future of the Republican Party. Josh Hawley, I've told you this for years now. I thought January 6th would diminish his profile, but no, it's actually raised his profile. But Josh Hawley is the future of the Republican Party, and the future of the Republican Party is anti-business, anti-economic freedom, anti-capitalism, and anti-personal freedoms. And they would love, and they're doing this, they're lumping in all the corporations with the devil, with the left, and therefore the corporations are evil because the left is evil, and they tend to be left, and therefore they're all evil. And that's going to be, and they're succeeding. Look, they're succeeding. What I think DeSantis did to Disney is horrific. Recently I heard that DeSantis this is proposed in Florida, not yet. They want to make it illegal for parents to take their kids to drag shows, to shows in which men dress with women's clothes. They'll define it as child abuse. I mean, that's just horrific and disgusting. Religion isn't child abuse. Taking your child to church isn't worse than taking them to drag queen, give me a break. Now, there are drag queen shows that are inappropriate for kids, absolutely, and parents don't take them. There are drag queen shows that deal with issues that kids should not be exposed to, but parents, that's their responsibility, figure out what they get to decide what the kids are exposed to or not. And then there are drag queen shows that are completely innocent. Men wearing dresses. In the army, that used to be a regular form of entertainment in the military. Halloween, boys used to be able to dress up as girls for fun. Completely innocuous, thank you. But Governor DeSantis knows better what's good for your kids. He is going to tell you. He's going to tell you how to raise your kids. He is going to dictate. This is where we are heading. We're heading to that place. Did you see the court sided with the Institute for Justice on the education funding case in Maine? I talked about that. I'm not as enthusiastic as many of you are about that. Maybe we should be overly disappointed in this court. They may move in a free market direction. On certain issues, they probably will. But if you read Alito's decision, particularly the draft, which I think was more reflective of his opinion, and then, but also in the final decision, he is not for economic liberty. He does not recognize contracts as a right. He does not recognize your economic freedom as a right. So they might on this issue or that issue, but it doesn't matter. This ruling is enough to dismiss this court. Also about the court, Harper Campbell asked, what did the court rule on regard to qualified immunity? Can we no longer sue police officers directly for misconduct? I'm not a legal expert, so we'd have to ask somebody. My understanding is they ruled that you can't sue a cop for not giving you your rights. So if they arrest you without telling you what your rights are, You can't civilly sue them. But they also was a lawsuit. There's also another ruling about federal policing agencies that could not be sued. So it looks like the court has expanded the scope of qualified immunity significantly, where we can no longer sue police. Another way in which this court is anti-freedom and anti-liberty, in my view. Let's see. So Linda writes, 50 years ago, I was 26 and single and an objectivist. I remember how happy I was when Roe versus Wade happened. I thought it was the end of the debate. Yeah. But here's the point. Here's the thing, Linda, and the sad reality is that the reason it wasn't the end of the debate is because the ruling wasn't right, in the sense that it didn't, the ruling wasn't based on a proper conception of individual rights. And that the religious right, because it has a clear ideology, it has clear ideas, it's therefore passionate and activist on specific issues, and the left, or the people who supported abortion, who are mainly on the left, were so weak in defending those rights. And, of course, because so many of us, in the name of protecting, I don't know, in the name of hating the left, were willing to give the right more and more and more and more power. Never question them, never challenge them, never reject them. So instead of penalizing the right when it did stupid things, like Ayn Rand didn't want to vote for Ronald Reagan because he brought the moral majority into the Republican Party. And then the moral majority was part of the Republican Party, still is. Did any of us, some of us did, but did most of the people stop voting for Republicans because they were so in the grasp of the moral majority? No, still voted for them because, oh, the left is so bad, we can't vote for them. And we continued, and then I had all these debates about Trump. Oh no, we can't. We have to continue, even though Trump made this possible by electing these judges. And the fact is, Americans support abortion. Poll after poll after poll. Certainly in the first trimester or two, Americans overwhelmingly support abortion. So this is just a minority in this case, a passionate, committed people who are not willing to compromise and who have wrapped themselves up with the flag and with supposedly free markets, and we keep voting them in. All of us vote for them because, A, they're better than the left. Are they? All right. Free Trade says, I think the legal question comes crystal clear when you consider that there are zero protections for fetuses' rights in the Constitution, whereas for women, there are several. Well, yes. And that really, individual rights, fetuses are not individuals. That's why. You can conceive of rights. What does rights mean? And I've told you this when I talked about this. Rights are supposed to protect you as an individual in a social context, basically protect you from other people in a social. There's no social context for a fetus. It's in the womb. That's it. There's nothing to protect. A fetus does not take actions. Rights are supposed to protect your ability to act. This is how Rand defines rights, as a moral concept, protecting your actions. Fetuses don't act. So they're not self-sustaining or self-regulating. Zvika, thank you. You're on for what you do, $100. Thanks for being a beacon of reason, Zvika and Nama. Thanks, guys. Really, really appreciate the support. Right. Let's see if there's any other abortion questions. So we're now at $800. So we're slowly getting closer to the $1,000 goal. We'll see if we get there. Kyo says, I've just, because I raised this issue, I've seen some very disturbing drag queen shows where children have been present. Yeah, and whose responsibility is it that? The parents. And should the government stop them from being there? I don't think so. Now, if it's pornographic, I mean, yeah, you could maybe set a line somewhere, but you have to be careful. You have to be careful. A lot of parents are negligent about a lot of things. How much do we want the government stepping in to tell them? And by the way, the most negligent thing parents are when raising their kids is religion. It's teaching them that there's a God and teaching them that there's original sin. That's negligence. That's horror. That's destroying their kids' ability to have a life. Are we going to ban that? We're going to ban them from raising them, I don't know, Christian or Muslim or Jewish or just ban drag queens. That's the only thing we're going to ban. That's the thing that's destroying American culture. All right. Let's see. All right, if you like me like this, then $200. We'll get more of that. All right, a reminder to like the show. We've got 187 people. We just dropped to 84. 187 people, 192 actually, 192 people watching. We've got 133 likes, so please go in and like the show and help the algorithm, right? It's all about the algorithms, so help promote this on the algorithms. We won't be talking about social media today and how it causes, has contributed to American disintegration. We'll do that on a future show. If you're interested in that topic, I highly recommend, not that I agree with it, but I recommend reading this essay by Jonathan Haidt, Why the Past 10 Years of American Life Have Been Uniquely Stupid, which is a good essay, even though I disagree with much of it. But it's a lot of fodder for thought and for discussion. All right, let's continue with the questions. Dan says, and this is moving away from abortion. Hey, Yaron, perspective on the Assange case, please. Awesome shows lately, thank you. Oops, let me start that. I forgot to. Yeah, so the Assange case. Look, I believe that there is a difference, a fundamental difference between Assange and Snowden. Snowden did what he did in order to protect liberty in the United States. He did what he did consciously trying to prevent damage, taking out, not publishing those things that could be damaging to the United States, and revealing that which he thought was clearly where the U.S. government was violating the rights of Americans, where the U.S. government was actually going against the fundamental interests and the fundamental rights of American citizens. And in that sense, I think Snowden is a hero. Assange, on the other hand, is, I think, a nihilist. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if he's revealing corporate secrets, like private property. He doesn't care if he's revealing, secrets that are going to get people killed. He doesn't, if it's a secret somewhere, if somebody has information that's not out there, he was willing to publish it. And in that sense, while Snowden is a hero, Assange is a bad guy and should be tried. He is not out there trying to protect our rights. He's just there to knock the authorities down. Now, I don't believe the U.S. government should have a lot of secrets. I think they should have very few secrets. This is why I'm pro-Snowden. I don't think we should have secret courts. I completely reject the FISA courts, the existence of the FISA courts. And in that sense, Snowden highlighting that is good. And there's plenty of stuff that the government keeps secret that it shouldn't keep secret. The number of secrets a government should have, remember, it's our servant, from us, is very, very limited. But some secrets need to exist, and to the extent that you don't separate between the two, you should be tried for violating, and of course, secrets are property rights. Companies have secrets. To get them, you have to steal them. You know, it's theft. So Assange is responsible for theft, responsible for aiding and abetting theft, might be responsible for aiding and abetting treason, and he should be tried for all of those. Let's see, Ashton for $50 is depressing. Ashton says, it's over, Yaron. Time to bow down to the collectivists, suck up to them as much as possible so we can get a fair piece of the pie. Well, since I wrote a whole book about the fact that there is no pie, since I intend to bake my own pie and continue to bake my own pie and make my own pie, and I intend that pie to be pretty big, my pie, and since I will not bow down to anybody, and I will go down fighting with my AK-47, I guess, if it comes to that, before I bow down to anybody to ask them for anything, it ain't happening. I will fight. I will fight to the end. And I hope that what that entails is an intellectual fight, because I'm getting older and a physical fight I'm not up to it anymore. But I intend to fight, to speak, to resist, to offend, to argue against, to continue to offend, and to keep speaking for the cause of liberty, for the cause of reason, for the cause of individualism. I am not going to be silenced by the fact that they have all the guns, that they have all the power, that they have everything. As long as I'm permitted to speak, I will speak. And when I'm not permitted to speak, I will still speak. I have no intention of shutting up. I will find ways to always speak, to talk about what I see as the truth, what I see as the cause of liberty, what I see as the cause of freedom. And I don't care how many people agree with me. I don't care how many people support me. I don't care. I mean, I'd love it to be large numbers. But if everybody turns against me, it won't matter as long as I think that I'm speaking the truth. Because the only person I have to impress, the only person who really matters is me. I think Johnny Carson said something really similar to that, which was very impressive. You know, he doesn't care about the audience. He doesn't care. The only person he needs to, you know, entertain is himself. As long as he thinks he's doing a good job, he will continue to do it. So the collectivists don't scare me. They worry me. They don't scare me. They certainly will not silence me. Right? And you know, you will be amazed. I know you were just joking, but you will be amazed that my show on What is a Woman is still up. Nobody's taking it down so far. Nobody's taking it down. So far, maybe because I don't have enough followers, we'll see. But so far, I'm not being, even YouTube is not silencing me. But if YouTube does, we'll find other platforms. We'll always find a way to get the word out there. Always find a way to get the word out there. There always will be a way. And the whole crypto and all of this, you know, they're developing technologies where we can do a lot of things privately, where we can't be identified, it can't be located. So they're preparing us for a world where maybe we won't have the right to free speech, but we will still be able to speak from hiding, I guess. Right? Ashton said, just joking, obviously, I will gladly join you in fighting to the death for radical fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. Thank you, Ashton. I know, and I know there are many of you, and I know that I'm not alone in this. I know that I'm not fighting alone in this. While I say all I care is me, it's not really true. it matters that there are people fighting with me. It matters that there are other people who agree with me. It matters, and it gives me hope. It gives me hope, right? That we can, gain the power, gain the numbers, gain the intellect. We have the intellectual high ground, and now it's a matter of using that intellectual, high ground to bring our ideas, to make them the dominant ideas in the culture, to make them the ideas that shape the culture of the future. And I think we can, and I think we will, ultimately. Whether I live to see it, probably not. But hopefully, and I'm still hopeful that I will see the beginnings of it. Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate it. To always finding a way. Thank you, Paul. All right, Dave asks, if you lived in an objectivist world, would you still be teaching objectivism for a living? Probably not. Who knows what I'd be doing if I lived in an objectivist world? Finance, who knows? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, the world would be so different. The way I grew up would be different. The way I was living it would be different. The opportunity set would be different. But I'm not a philosopher. Who knows? I mean, maybe I would have become still an intellectual, but it wouldn't be. I wouldn't be teaching objectivism because I'd leave that to the philosophers. Michael asks, is the concept of victim blaming a package deal? Victim blaming a package deal? I don't think so. I think there is such a thing as victim blaming. It's where you're blaming the victim for what happened to them. I think it's awful and horrible. I don't think it's a package deal. I just think it's an evil thing that you're doing. The concept itself is understandable. It's you can define it. You can see you can see it being applied. People are questioning whether I'm a philosopher. Kyle says, the best philosopher. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not technically a philosopher, and it's easier for me now to consider myself one. I haven't studied philosophy seriously, properly. I've studied objectivism, but even there, I'm not a philosopher. I'm an intellectual. I'm a public intellectual. I know a lot about the objectivist philosophy, but I think it would be pretentious for me to call myself a philosopher, so I don't. Let's see. And there are good philosophers out there, so I look up to them, core philosophers. I've been introduced as a philosopher. Sure, I've been introduced as a libertarian. I've been introduced to a lot of things. The circumstances in which you correct the person, the circumstances in which you don't correct the person. I don't feel like every time somebody introduces me in a way that's not exactly right, I need to correct them. I think that's ridiculous. I've said enough times on this show that I don't consider myself a philosopher. I've said enough times in public that I'm not a libertarian, that I don't feel like every time somebody introduces me because of the way they see me as, what was I introduced? I was introduced in England as having a massive following in the United States, one of the biggest talk show hosts in America. And what am I supposed to interrupt the introduction, say, no, I'm not. I mean, that would be, there's only so much you can do in a setting like that, right? I'm a public intellectual. Do with that what you will. I'm a public intellectual that takes a philosophical perspective on the issues of the day, because as a public intellectual, philosophy is where you start. All right, Kiro says, I didn't say the government should step in, and I agree that religion does a lot of damage to religion. Telling them that if they sin, they will spend eternity in hell is evil. Government still shouldn't step in. Yeah, I agree. And I didn't mean to imply that you thought, but yes, parents are responsible. Parents do take kids to all kinds of shows they shouldn't take them, expose them to all kind of stuff they shouldn't expose them. A lot of the video games kids play, I don't think they should play. A lot of what kids are engaged in and exposed to, and a lot of parenting is bad parenting, right? And it's terrible. and it's not good, but it's not something the government should get involved in. And I think we agree on that, Kirill. And I didn't mean to imply that you thought differently. Sorry. I just get excited about certain comments. Okay, Ashton says, what do you think about the bill, the gun bill King Biden just signed into law today? Don't call him King Biden. He's no more King Biden or less King Biden than previous presidents have been. I don't have a strong opinion about it. I don't think it's that bad. I think increasing background checks, particularly for people at 18 to 21. You can't drink a beer, but you can buy an AK-47 without us asking any questions. I haven't read the bill in detail, but what I've seen of it, it seems pretty unoffensive. And for those of us who want to buy guns to protect ourselves, this is not going to stop you from doing that. It's not going to stop you from doing that. It might make it mildly less convenient to do so. All right. All right, let's see. We've got a few more questions, and we did make the $1,000 goal, so thank you, everybody. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for the support. This month has been a terrific month in terms of Super Chat support. So thank you for everybody who listens live. Of course, those of you not listening live, you can support the show if you like it at YaronBrookShow.com/support, Patreon, or Subscribestar. You can use any one of those services. Just put in Yaron Brook Show. Yaron Brook Show. The best place, though, is YaronBrookShow.com/support. Okay, we got a bunch of more questions still. Mr. Muffin asks, what kind of architecture do you like? Do you like Zaha Hadid's God or Bjarke Ingels' work? I don't know them. Does your view of art translate to type of architecture? Now, architecture is different because architecture is functional. So it serves, it's different than art, which is not functional, which is there just for the experience. So architecture has to serve a function, and I think needs to be aesthetically beautiful. And so I love, I very much share my architecture likes with Ayn Rand. I love the way how it works. Buildings are described in the Fountainhead. I love the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright. I've been to a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright homes, and I love the experience of that. I like a lot of or some of the modernists, a lot of the kind of the homes in the LA area in Southern California. You can see a lot of homes that I would like. You can see them in Scottsdale. They are extraordinarily beautiful. I like a lot of the skyscrapers. Modern skyscrapers that I like. I don't like the new skyscrapers in New York, which I find boring, just boxes that go really, really high. But if, for example, if you go to Shanghai, you see some amazing skyscrapers. I like skyscrapers generally. You asked if I like Zaha Hadid, so I just pulled her up. This is the beauty of Google. I just pulled her up. Some of it is amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's a fire truck station here. It's just beautiful, just beautiful. So there's a ceiling with stairs going up. Gorgeous, interesting lines. I think well integrated, consistent with the application. Some of it not so much. Like the first picture I see here is too much concrete, too much bare concrete, too much like a bunker. Not enough windows, not enough airiness. Now, I don't know what the building is, so maybe if I knew what the building was, I'd have a different opinion. I'm trying to browse through this. There's a concert hall, something that looks like a concert hall that looks truly beautiful. So some of it I really, really like. So I like what modern materials allow people to do. I like the skyscrapers in Chicago mostly, even the modern ones. I like what modern materials allow to do. We can now create more flowing forms. We can now create even bigger cantilevers. We can now create more, more flowing, more rounded forms, which I think is really cool, something you couldn't do. So again, modern materials is really important. Hong Kong towers are beautiful. Okay, so now I'm looking at Jacques Ingels, who is a Danish, I guess, architect. Yeah, I mean, I like some of this. There's a beautiful triangle that is, I think, in Barcelona, though I haven't seen it in Barcelona when I was there. I didn't see it. There's a beautiful Architectural League of New York structure that's really, really beautiful. Some of it, I'm a little skeptical about these gardens integrated within the building completely. Some of it looks a little gimmicky to appeal to, like the what do you call it, the climate change people. But yeah, I mean, I like this in a sense that it's super creative. It's not conventional. It's trying to do something interesting and different and unique and integrating new materials, using those materials to break away from just the square or the block. And again, you have to know what the building is for to really evaluate it, but also adjusting it for. God, this is not helpful. Adjusting it for the way it's going to be used, which is really important. I don't know why it won't let me onto his website. So okay, this is confusing. All right, I'm going to skip that. I saw enough photos, I think, to have a sense of it. But yeah, I love architecture. I don't know architects that much, but when I travel, I always I'm aware of architecture and looking for interesting architecture. I've complained bitterly about American architecture, particularly suburban American architecture, on my show often about, McMansions and everything that I find boring and dull and gray and everything that America shouldn't be. I find architecture in places like Denmark, some of it really interesting. So Scandinavia, like modern cities like Denmark seem to be. Again, China has some stunning architecture. The most amazing architecture in the world has been produced in China over the last few decades. Hong Kong, Asia generally, some beautiful things in Singapore. Korea, Japan is less interesting, I think. I think South Korea is less interesting. There's something about experimentation and pushing the envelope there. But yeah, I mean, I love modern architecture. I love the use of modern materials. I like breaking from the past because you have now better new materials. I hate to say it, but I probably liked architecture in Dubai, even though I despise the place. So, Dubai, the United Arab Emirates have built some really, really interesting things. Walter, thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. Emmanuel asks the big question. He's not shying away from big questions, right? His question is the West dead? Well, I mean, I don't know, and I don't even completely like the question. The real question should be, are Western ideals or Western values dead? And to that, I think the answer is no. They might not survive in America. They might not survive in Europe. I don't know. But they will survive. Human beings will not ultimately reject them, will not move away from them. Partially, their survival as a species depends on them. So I don't think Western ideals are dead. And I think they will survive as long as there are thinking human beings around, they will survive. I think we live in a world in which the Enlightenment cannot be ignored. We cannot completely turn our backs to it. It is part of our life. It is part of our world. I think that because of that, these ideas will survive somewhere. They'll survive in pockets, and they will ultimately rise. Is the West in decline? There's no question it is. Is it dead yet? No, it's not dead. All you have to do is go to Go to London or go to go to London or go to New York or go to Austin, Texas, and you can see that the life of people, they're thriving. And again, in many respects, life has never been better, right? But it is showing every signs at the intellectual level, at the political level, to be in decay, to be rotten, and to be slowly dying. So it's not dead, but it is dying. Is there enough time to save it? I think so. I still think so. I'm not sure exactly why. I have to figure out my answer to that by the time I give a talk at Ocon. But I think so. And I have to say that I think Ayn Rand will play a big role in saving it. I think only she can save it in many respects. Only her ideas can save it. And to the extent that there are people out there influenced by her ideas, the extent that you guys are all out there talking about her ideas, and supporting me so I can talk about the ideas, to that extent, you can't give up. To that extent, there is hope. To that extent, there is hope. Lots of people can help, but they can only help to the extent that Ayn Rand's ideas are at the core. There's no other set of ideas. Hayek cannot save the world. Mises cannot save the world. They can help. Only philosophy can save the world, and there's no philosopher out there who can do it. There's no other philosopher who defends the Enlightenment, who completes the project of the Enlightenment other than Rand. All right, Michael, we still got a bunch of questions. Michael says, is it true that evil never dies? It only reinvents itself. And do you notice there are passive and active nihilists? I don't understand the active ones. Well, I don't know what it means to say evil never dies. It's probably true that as long as they're human beings, the act of evasion is possible. And some people will choose to evade, and therefore, to that extent, evil will never die. Evil is just around, because as long as we have free will, we can choose to be evil. With regard to nihilists, yeah, there are people who their nihilism is primarily reflected in the fact that they are miserable, maybe that they commit suicide, or maybe that they are just miserable, pathetic lives. And then there are the active nihilists who take it all the way, who want to get that rush of momentary pleasure from actually seeing their nihilism manifest in reality, and that's the people who go out there and destroy for the sake of destruction. The passive ones are not very dangerous, and the active ones are very dangerous. But what happens is that the passive ones vote the active ones into power, and so they still help, they still bring about massive amounts of damage. James, seems Kant's main accomplishment was give justification for evil psychologies. This seems to manifest in many different ways, not just marching Nazis. Oh yeah, absolutely. Kant is not just responsible for the Nazis, he's responsible for almost every modern evil that exists out there. And there's a sense in which Plato is responsible for Kant, and therefore Plato is responsible for every existing evil out there, right? I don't think that Kant is responsible for all these variations, because he detaches reason from reality, and because he basically, detaches morality from happiness. Those are the two big evils, and they're big, right? Detaching reason from reality, detaching morality from happiness, and self-interest. That's it. I mean, that's enough to condemn you to hell for eternity. Chris says, what are your favorite violin concertos? Mine are Sibelius and Tchaikovsky. Well, certainly Sibelius and Tchaikovsky among the top 5. I would add to that the Brahms, the Beethoven, the Mendelssohn. Am I missing anything? Those would be my top 5. So Sibelius, Tchaikovsky, Brahms, Beethoven, and Mendelssohn. Yeah, I think that's it. There are significantly fewer violin concertos than there are. I mean, there are other great violin concertos. There are Paganini's violin concertos. I don't think they're top 5, but they're 6, 7, 8. They're top 10. the Paganini violin concertos, and there are many others, but there are fewer violin concertos than piano concertos, so it's a little easier with violin concertos. That doodle bunny, not dandy. Did mass incarceration in the 1980s and 90s lead to lower crime rates, or was it a massive rights violation? And in reality, it was the legalization of abortion that brought down crime. Did mass incarceration in the 80s and 90s lower crime? Or was it rights violation? I think it was both. I think it lowered crime and it was a massive rights violation. I'm not a utilitarian or consequentialist in that sense, right? You can lower crime by violating people's rights. That would make you the criminal, right? So for example, you could have a curfew every single night, not allow anybody out of their home at night, and you would probably lower crime. Or you could just do it for males, because females don't commit crimes that many. So you could have a curfew for all men, or you could force all men to wear chastity belts, and make it so only their wives had a key, and therefore rape would go down to zero, right? I don't know. You could do all kinds of things that would violate rights that would lower crime. I think both are true. It lowered crime rates and it violated rights. In reality, was the legalization of abortion that brought down crime? I doubt it. I think it had an effect probably, because less unwanted children, but I don't think it has been shown to be the dominant thing that affected crime rates. It's one of many things. Is a jury system necessary for a free society, or could you just have a panel of judges who need unanimous agreement to pass guilty? I mean, Lenin Peikoff has argued in the post, what's his name, O.J. Simpson trial, post-O.J. Simpson trial, he argued against jury trials and for the French system, which positions a judge as the discoverer of truth and the guy who figures out what's true. And then you have both sides of the attorneys are basically trying to uncover the evidence for the judge to figure out what the truth is. So, and it's not an adversarial system. Lenin Peikoff came up for that. I don't have a strong position one way or the other. It's not an area I've really researched. Alejandro, is all welfare unconstitutional? I don't want that. Yes, it's all unconstitutional because it's all a violation of individual rights. Taking from some by force to give to others is a violation of rights and therefore unconstitutional. Liam asks, once you have FU money, why do you care about taxes? Just live where you love, Southern California. Yeah, when I get there, and I have enough money, I'll live exactly where I want. Maybe it'll be Southern California, maybe it'll be northern Spain, who knows where it'll be. But I haven't got there yet. And the last few years have made it more difficult to get there. COVID did not help at all with me getting where I need to get. James asks, do European countries regulate their markets less than we do because their populations weren't raised with John Dewey and are less immature babies who need hand-holding? There's an element of that. I think there is an element of that. But, we started in America regulating early on, just like the Europeans did. I think there's less regulation in Europe because they've just focused their altruism. They focused the role of government differently. They also have experience with socialism that we do not, and they stayed away from that. So it's just, I don't know that there's any particular reason why the structure is different. I don't think it's John Dewey in particular. I think it has to do with the history and how markets and regulations and all that evolved in Europe versus the United States. I also think, yeah, I think that's right. James asks, what do you think is the future of property taxes? It only goes up and never down. What are the reasons to work for a better lifestyle when the government takes more from you in terms of wealth? Yeah, I mean, it takes more and more from you in terms of wealth, in terms of time, constantly. Property taxes went down once, was in 1978. in California, which was the beginning of the anti-tax movement. But there is no such movement in America today. If anything, we want to raise taxes. So I just don't see where the impetus for lowering property taxes and other taxes are going to come from. It came in the late 1970s when there's a wave of anti-tax, small government, get the government out of the economy movement, stimulated, I think, by Rand, Milton Friedman, Hayek, Mises, more and more free marketers within the Republican Party that ultimately led to the election of Ronald Reagan. I think Rand had an important role to play in all that. But none of that is around today. There's just not enough of that. Nobody seems to care. They care about it. They care about, a drag queen story hour at the library 1,000 times more than how much taxes you pay. The Republicans do. And the left wants to tax you all they can. All right, everybody. Thank you. Very generous. We made it. We made our expanded goal of $1,000. So thanks everybody who participated. Thank you all for listening. Again, if you're listening to this not live, or if you just don't want to do Super Chat or don't use Super Chat, you can support the show by going to YaronBrookShow.com/support, using Patreon, using Subscribestar. You can even, after the show, there's a feature on YouTube where you can, I think, applaud and you can make a contribution to the show in YouTube. You can also become a member, a part of a member of the Yaron Brook Show in YouTube. There's a join button down there. We're going to have all kinds of perks. I said there would be perks once we reached 100. We just reached 100, so something to celebrate. I'll be doing some member-only shows. So member-only shows, I'm thinking of doing the tour of my condo only for members. So if you want a tour of the condo, if you want me to go over the condo and maybe talk a little about the arts on the walls and show you the view and show you all of that and this office and the setup I have here and all of that, then become a member. It's not expensive. I think it's $5, $6. Just click below, join, you become a member, and then you'll be invited for shows just for members, and we'll be doing those once a month or so. Ashton said, if you could ask Immanuel Kant one question, what would it be? I don't know. Why did you never leave your stupid little town your entire life? If I could get Kant to do one thing, is explore, live. Maybe if he lived a little bit more, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what question I would ask him. Because I don't think it matters. I don't think there's anything you could ask him or tell him that would make any difference to him. If you wanted to ask a deep philosophical question, you have to ask something that showed the contradiction in his epistemology. But, why do you hate individuals so much, Kant? Why do you hate human happiness so much? Why do you hate pleasure so much? Because if you read what he wrote about masturbation, God, that's a guy you don't want to actually give any power to or take too seriously. All right, guys, I will see you on Tuesday. As I said, I'm going to be at Ocon. I hope you guys at Ocon. If you're at Ocon, come up and introduce yourself. Even if I've already met you, come up and introduce yourself, because I'll probably have forgotten you. I'll be at Ocon from the beginning all the way to the end. We'll have a show on Tuesday. I don't think we'll have a show on Thursday because I'm already at Ocon and we've got a dinner that I'm participating in. So no show on Thursday unless I do it during the day. There will be a special show on Wednesday on the Supreme Court with Ankar Gate and Ben. We will have read all the decisions involved so we can dig deep into those decisions and comment specifically on them. And I'll be streaming them on here, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. James G. asks, why do people not evolve? It appears that technology will not kill mankind. It will be mankind no matter how much we advance technology. Humans don't. Yeah, I mean, technology is not going to kill us. We will kill ourselves. We will commit suicide. Nobody's going to kill the West. The West will commit suicide. All right, guys. See you on Tuesday. Bye, everybody.